to repair the relationship with my beloved wife. We both ended up taking a rather long detour. But we won't be separating anymore. This time, I want you to listen to my roundabout love story. I'm Bob Conley. At the age of 26, I met Lisa Yoder at my coworker's wedding. Lisa was the same age as me, attending the wedding as a friend of the bride. When I saw her from the groomsmen's seats giving a toast on behalf of the bride's friends, I was, to say the least, completely smitten. Her navy dress and stylish updo were just too beautiful. Love at first sight. I ended up telling my coworkers about it, and thanks to the newlyweds introducing us, I was able to get to know Lisa. Then, at the age of 26, Lisa and I got married. Lisa came from a father-daughter family, but she had cut ties with her father. Turns out my father-in-law had a hard time holding down a job and was fond of gambling. Lisa, who lost her mother at a young age, lived with her father but seemed to have faced many hardships. By the time Lisa became a high school student, her father had stopped coming home frequently, and she moved out as soon as she graduated from high school. Since then, she seemed to have survived on her own while working part-time jobs. Knowing her past, I wanted to marry this strong woman and make her happy. So, at the age of 26, Lisa and I got married. But our life after that was not all happiness. Lisa got pregnant shortly after our marriage. We both wanted children, so of course, we were overjoyed. But she miscarried before she could enter the stable period. We could have bounced back after one miscarriage, but 2 consecutive ones really wore Lisa down. At the recommendation of our obstetrician, we had some tests and found out Lisa had infertility. It seemed she could get pregnant, but would repeatedly miscarry or have stillbirths. The cause was unknown. I'm sorry. The baby keeps coming to us, but I can't seem to nurture it. Lisa sank into sadness and started having more and more depressed days. It's not your fault, Lisa. You're always trying your best. I continued to support Lisa. A while after being diagnosed with infertility, I invited Lisa on a trip to Arizona. Arizona is the hometown of Lisa's deceased mother. Although it's not really her hometown, since her maternal grandparents are also gone. But Lisa had always wanted to visit Arizona, where her kind mother grew up. I think going to Arizona was the right decision. The nature, warm weather, and delicious food of Arizona healed Lisa's body and mind, and for the first time since her miscarriages, she showed a genuine smile on this trip. On the last day of the trip, we were able to see a huge rainbow in the sky. It's beautiful. I wonder if my mom and babies can see it, Lisa said while shedding tears. I also teared up while holding Lisa's shoulder. They're watching. Lisa, I'm sure your mother is watching over our children from up above. This wasn't just to comfort her. I genuinely believed it. While watching the rainbow, we talked and decided that it's okay even if we can't have children. We would support each other as a couple. Is that okay with you, Bob? If you were with someone else, you might be able to have a child without any problems. I stared right into Lisa's eyes. I didn't want her to misunderstand. I didn't marry you because you could give me children. I married you because I wanted to be with you forever. What matters most to me is that you are with me, whether we have kids or not. Lisa was crying, her face covered by both hands. Thank you. Thank you, Bob. I'm sure that while she was struggling with the diagnosis of infertility, the thought of divorce must have crossed her mind. I'm truly glad we came on this trip before things escalated, giving us the opportunity to share our feelings. I genuinely felt that way. From then on, our life as a married couple was peaceful and happy, even though it was only for a brief period. When Lisa and I were 29, out of the blue, Lisa declared she wanted a divorce. Please, let's get a divorce. Lisa wasn't crying, her eyes not of hesitation, but of determination already set. Can't we talk it out anymore? I think my voice was trembling, pitifully. Yeah, it's not a proposition. It's a decision I've made. I'm sorry if it seems selfish. I think it was the first time I heard Lisa's voice this cold. Why? Can you tell me why? To my question, Lisa answered without hesitation. There's someone else I love. For his sake, I can't stay with you anymore. It was the first time she referred to me as you. Her words carried such a strong will that I immediately understood that nothing I could say would change her mind. Maybe I just wasn't enough to make Lisa happy. Or perhaps being with me reminded her of our miscarriage. Or maybe I thought of various reasons. But all of them were just me trying to run away from reality. Lisa loves someone else now. That's all there is to it, and I had to accept it. I understand. As I said that, Lisa bowed her head. She kept her head down for a long time, saying, "I'm sorry. Thank you for everything. Really, thank you." I didn't respond to her. I didn't want to hear thank you if we were getting a divorce, if she was leaving for another man. If she said that at the end, I couldn't bear any resentment. Even after all this, I couldn't think of Lisa as a terrible woman. Lisa in my heart was always my kind, adorable, beloved wife. Lisa signed the divorce papers and left the house the next day. I was curious whether she really went to that man, whether she could find another home that quickly, but there was no way to find out. I contacted the bride and groom of the wedding that led to our meeting and asked if they had heard anything from Lisa, but they knew nothing. No one else knew where Lisa went. Lisa had quit her part-time job, and she didn't answer her phone. The day after the divorce, I lost track of where Lisa was. I decided to believe that Lisa is probably happy with the man she loves. But I couldn't help but feel down, so I immersed myself in my work. My coworkers worried that I was overworking, but only during work could I forget about Lisa. I even went on a blind date at the request of my boss. You haven't been yourself since the divorce, have you? If you meet someone new, you might feel better, you know. The blind date I tried didn't go well. Well, the woman wanted to meet again, but I just couldn't imagine a future with her. I wanted the woman by my side to be Lisa. I just kept thinking that. I knew it was pathetic, but there was nothing I could do about these feelings. About 5 years after the divorce, I had a business trip to Arizona, Lisa's mother's hometown, the first place Lisa and I traveled to after our miscarriage. I decided to take some time off after the business trip and treat it like a heartbreak journey. Since 5 years had already passed, I had decided to take one last wander down memory lane and forget about Lisa once and for all once I left Arizona. Having finished my work at the business trip there, I went on vacation. I aimlessly toured the places Lisa and I had visited together. I remember having a great time when we came as a couple, but being alone made everything seem tasteless and boring. And so, I ended up at a small local diner we visited. Wondering what we ate here, I entered the diner and heard a bright welcome. I recognized the voice all too well and found myself staring at the waitress. Lisa. Yes, the waitress was Lisa. Her hair had grown out, she had lost some weight, but it was undeniably Lisa. Lisa also seemed to recognize me, looking dumbfounded in surprise. Bob. Seeing our reactions, the restaurant owner asked if we knew each other. When I explained that I was Lisa's ex-husband, the owner was very considerate and let Lisa out for a break. But it was a real coincidence to see Lisa, and I was worried that Lisa might find it troublesome, so I looked at her cautiously. Lisa also seemed puzzled, but I thought this accidental reunion might be some sort of fate, so I called out to her. "Do you want to talk outside a bit?" I was prepared to be turned down, but Lisa agreed to join me. We walked silently for a while, but then it suddenly started raining, so we rushed into a pavilion in the park. That's when I saw it as Lisa wiped her rain-soaked neck with a handkerchief. It was our wedding ring, dangling from the necklace Lisa was wearing. I pointed at Lisa's necklace. That's our wedding ring, the one we chose together. You said you'd met someone else, so why are you wearing it as a necklace? Caught off guard, Lisa quickly covered her necklace with her hand, but it was too late. And Lisa wasn't wearing any ring on her left hand. Perhaps she hadn't remarried. And why was she still in Arizona? Maybe there was a reason for our divorce that I didn't know about. That's what I was thinking. After all, would she lose so much weight if she was happy with someone else after leaving me? Lisa didn't seem happy at all. Even though I accepted the divorce because I wanted Lisa to be happy, Lisa, isn't there something you haven't told me? I couldn't forget about you these past 5 years, but I want to forget about you. That's why I'm touring Arizona again. But I can't go back to New York like this. Why are you still cherishing the ring? Was the real reason for our divorce because you found someone else? Please, I want to know. I'm begging you. When I bowed my head, Lisa said nothing for a while. But perhaps understanding that I wasn't going to back down, she finally began to talk. The truth is, I got a call from my father. She hadn't told her estranged father where she was living after we'd got married. But my father-in-law had managed to track down Lisa's location and had apparently called her. He had lost a lot of money gambling and had racked up debts, so he asked Lisa to lend him some money. Of course, Lisa turned him down. But gradually, the frequency of contact increased, and it seemed that calls started coming into her workplace. Furthermore, these calls weren't just from her father, but also from unknown men claiming they had lent him money. It appears her father even threatened Lisa. If she continued refusing, he'd take it up with her husband. I was in the dark. Why didn't you come to me? Nothing happened. You must have been scared. I've probably already caused enough trouble for you, Bob, by not being able to have kids, haven't I? On top of that, I didn't want to worry you about money because of the debt. I didn't know if this was going to be a one-time thing with my dad asking for a loan. If there's a chance that this could go on indefinitely, I thought it would be better to separate from you, Bob. After 5 years, when I learned of Lisa's feelings, I felt utterly helpless. Lisa must have been heartbroken at the persistent contact from her father. At the time, I was living day to day without even realizing it. Lisa made the decision to divorce, thinking of me. Feeling like I've only ever scared and troubled you. Lisa, it makes me hate myself. Are things still the same? Are you still getting calls from your father? Lisa sadly shook her head in response. It seems her father had passed away a year after our divorce. He'd always been a heavy drinker, apparently, and he'd fallen down the stairs of a bar while drunk, which was the cause of his death. At the same time, his debts disappeared, and the calls demanding money stopped. I felt a little relieved when the debt was gone, but still, when even such a terrible parent died, I felt a little down. It's strange, the ties of blood. But I thought, that's just Lisa's kindness. Usually people would not be sad to see their detritus, neglectful parents go. Lisa, even after our divorce, remained as kind as ever, I realized. But if her father had passed away, all of our problems should have disappeared. If only she had contacted me then. As if reading my thought, Lisa said, actually, I asked a friend to check on you, Bob. When I did, I heard from her that you were having a matchmaking meeting with your boss's daughter. I thought I shouldn't get in your way anymore and I couldn't contact you. I asked that friend to keep my situation a secret and didn't tell her where I was living. No, you've got it wrong. That was just a favor for my boss. I went because I had to. Of course I turned it down. There was no need for me to panic since I had a matchmaking meeting during the time we were divorced. But I rushed to make excuses. I didn't want to be misunderstood as having a successful relationship with the person I met. Apparently, my feelings for Lisa haven't changed. And I had a feeling that was hard to describe when I found out Lisa didn't divorce me because she hated me. Lisa, I still love you. I always will. I want you to be with me again. Lisa shook her head while trembling. The debt issue has been resolved, but my infertility hasn't healed. I didn't want to cause you financial trouble, but more than that, I wanted you to be a dad. You're good with kids and you're kind. But if you're going to be a dad, it can't be with me by your side. I gently put my hand on Lisa's trembling shoulder as she cried. You know, if I could, I wanted to be the father of our child. But that was just, it would be nice if I could kind of thought. Didn't I tell you before? What's most important is that I want you by my side, now and always. Being a couple with you is what matters most. Just then, the rain stopped and a huge rainbow appeared in the sky. It was like the rainbow we saw together when we went on a trip to Arizona after Lisa's miscarriage. Lisa seemed to remember that too. That time as well, when you took me on a trip, we saw a rainbow just like this one. I said without taking my eyes off the rainbow. Yay, that's right. We decided then and there, watching that rainbow, that we'd support each other. I wonder if this is a coincidence. Huh, what do you mean? Lisa, wiping her tears, looked puzzled at my words. I made eye contact with Lisa and told her my thoughts. Don't you feel like this rainbow is cheering us on, like it's from Lisa's mom and our children, who passed away? I think we've never been alone. I believe Lisa's mom and our children have been watching over us all this time. Let's stay together. I'm sure it'll be okay, because they're all with us. As I said this, Lisa smiled and squeezed my hand tightly. When I think about my mom and our kids watching over us, I can't lie about how I feel. I feel the same way. I've been thinking about you, Bob, all this time. I hugged Lisa tightly at that moment. I've wanted to do this with you for the past 5 years. I was a little worried when I hugged her again after such a long time because she had lost weight. I've been waiting for this for 5 years. Just as Lisa wished, I held her tight. After a while, Lisa began living with me again. We also got remarried. When we got remarried, we went to formally greet my parents again. And that's when Lisa spoke up right there. I will never let him feel sorrow again. I will make him happy, she declared. I was moved to tears when I thought back on the past 5 years. Lisa gently wiped away my tears with a handkerchief. I'm sorry for all the tears. It's okay. I'll be right next to you to wipe them away from now on. Despite being a man, I cried hard at her words. 2 years after our remarriage, we were blessed with a child. We didn't know if the infertility treatment would work, but we discussed it as a couple and decided to give it a shot. Holding our newborn baby, Lisa said to me, "Thank you for finding me again. Because of you, I got to meet this child. I was the one who wanted to say thank you. I will protect Lisa and our child. I am determined to cherish this happiness so that our family will never be separated again." You found out, didn't you? Her chuckle echoed from the darkness. It was our first night together. The touch of her skin felt oddly different. Seeing my startled retraction, she laughed. What's happening? I couldn't help my curiosity and asked. She narrowed her eyes at me. Cries, cat-like, predatory. Curiosity can be dangerous, she said, slowly revealing her skin. She was truly beautiful then. Even after a decade, I still remember. My name is John Adams. I had just turned 36 at the time. I worked in sales for a pharmaceutical company. Not to boast, but I was their top salesperson. My wife, Catherine, came from a popular family of practitioners. It was a marriage arranged by my father-in-law. Catherine, whom I met at the matchmaking event, seemed like a proper lady. I found no reason to refuse, and so we got married. The higher-ups in the company were pleased about this advantageous connection. It was quite the clue, earning me envy from my peers. After getting married, I threw myself into my work more than ever to drown out the noise. I didn't even imagine that someone who disliked my success was by my side. There are many employees at my level vying for promotions. There are even factions within the upper echelons that aren't visible on the surface. Success depended on standing out in terms of sales and the scale of hospitals I managed, and becoming favored by the influential faction in the upper management. But honestly, I wasn't interested in all that. I simply wanted to help patients through our products. It's not some noble idea. I had a sister who didn't survive childhood cancer. Today, there is a cure for that. She could have been saved. That's why I believe in the power of medicine. I think it's absolutely necessary for people's lives, and I've contributed to patients through it. I was proud of this job and truly loved it. My seemingly smooth sailing future suddenly became clouded. The much-anticipated new medicine, on which we spent a significant amount in development costs, was finally launched. My boss was enthusiastic about making our team the #1 in the nationwide sales of this. He emphasized its early adoption in the hospitals we were responsible for during our sales meetings. The hospitals I was in charge of within my team had the greatest influence. Doctors in this area are reluctant to use new medicine unless they are adopted in the hospitals I'm in charge of. However, there are some doctors who prefer to wait for a certain period before using new ones due to safety considerations. But my boss aggressively pushed sales to the doctors I was in charge of. Turns out, the chief of surgery in this hospital had a close relationship with my boss. I was in charge of the other departments, and my boss was in charge of the surgery department. It seemed like I was in charge, but we were sharing roles as suggested by my boss. My boss urged the chief of surgery to use the new medicine. At that time, frequent whining and dining by pharmaceutical companies was still common, and my boss often went drinking with the chief of surgery, using my entertainment budget. This new drug is a fantastic medication that can be effective even for patients who have not had enough effect with other drugs. Therefore, I really want patients who are struggling to consider using it. However, caution was required when using it. Most drugs have precautions for use. Especially for drugs where side effects are a concern, there can be patients who should absolutely not use them. Surprisingly, my boss did not promote the appropriate use, which could be called the most important mission. As a result, the chief of surgery prescribed the drug to a patient who should never have taken it. The patient suffered from severe side effects. It was a serious incident that went unnoticed in the pharmacy department. I rushed to the hospital as soon as the side effect report came in and collected detailed information after hearing about the case. I was in shock. The patient was someone who should never have been administered the drug, and the prescribing doctor claimed not to have known. I deeply regretted sharing responsibilities with my boss. My boss went pale. This became a major issue within the company. And then, my boss pushed everything onto me. In fact, my name is the one listed as the person in charge of the hospital internally. I followed my boss's instructions to handle the expense reports for the entertainment costs. I was called in by the executives and confronted with documents and receipts. Receipts from lounges and restaurants that I never visited but processed. No matter how many times I explained the situation, the overwhelming amount of evidence made it hard to convince them. My boss was sitting next to the executives, looking smug. However, I knew that it was all a bluff. His trembling fingertips gave him away. I've seen the ugly side of humanity, and I was suddenly sick of the life tied to achievement figures. Facing the accusing executives, I told them that everything was done on my own accord. I declared that I would take responsibility and resign. The room went silent at my forthright demeanor. I wondered if my boss would try to keep me, but he didn't, and I easily quit my job. I had some savings, and I figured I'd manage somehow. That's what I thought. When I got home, Catherine greeted me with a fury in her eyes. Apparently, my father-in-law already contacted her. She reproached me for quitting my job right at the doorstep. She had some documents clenched in her hand. I could instantly guess it was divorce papers. There was something almost laughably meticulous about it. She was ready to part ways swiftly with a husband who no longer held any value. I guess she'd taken some advice from her dad. Everything felt like such a hassle, so I just signed the divorce papers on the spot. The house was a gift to Catherine from her father. I'll let you know once I decide where I'm going. I left those words behind as I left our home. I knew I wouldn't be coming back, but surprisingly, I didn't feel a trace of regret. If Catherine had shown even a slight hesitation to take the divorce papers, I might have ended up begging her in tears. But Catherine took the divorce papers aggressively, looking at me as if I were trash. All she needed from me was my income and my status. Knowing this, I felt a sense of ironic humor. From the next day, I started looking for a place to live. Being jobless, it was hard to find a realtor who would accommodate me. Even with my income certificate, they were cold to an unemployed man. I was in a tight spot. I decided to ask for help from an old friend. I remembered him working in the real estate industry. My friend was surprised by my situation and amazed at my current state. While dumbfounded, he chuckled, saying, "You've always been like this, haven't you?" He asked me to wait for 3 minutes, and right on the dot, he called back. He'd found an apartment and told me to come immediately. In a hurry, I noted the address and hung up. Following the noted address, I arrived at an old-fashioned Western-styled apartment. The apartment was retro-styled, with one entrance. It seemed rooms were scattered with a corridor in between. There were mailboxes marked with room numbers at the entrance. My friend had mentioned there was a landlord I should talk to. "Excuse me," I called out, as there was no doorbell. I heard the patter of footsteps from the end of the corridor. The person who appeared was a young woman. Her long black hair and porcelain-like white skin were striking. "Oh, are you John? I've heard about you. I'm the landlord, Nancy Thompson. Nice to meet you," she said, offering her right hand. Taken aback, I shook her cool hand. Her wrists and fingers were slender. I was surprised to find myself reluctant to let go of the handshake. Her name was Nancy Thompson. The other people called her Nancy. This apartment that's been converted into apartments is exclusively occupied by women, they told me. There's no need for any deposit or broker's fee, but they ask for my help with the heavy lifting. When I agreed to help out if I could, Nancy said with a laugh, "Well then, consider our deal done." "John, I heard you used to work for a pharmaceutical company," she remarked, offering me the keys. She must have heard from a mutual friend. Yes, I did. I worked there for many years but recently resigned. When I admitted that I was hit with a divorce as soon as I quit my job, Nancy burst into laughter. She seemed genuinely surprised when I confessed that I left my house right after that. "Well, there's nothing wrong with starting over," she said, her smile dazzling me. She seemed unbothered when I promised to find work quickly. And so, my new life began. There were a variety of tenants in these apartments. Students, novelists, and single mothers. There was even a mother who was escaping from an abusive husband. They all seemed to rely on me, which had me shaking with fear, as I lacked confidence in physical strength. They were all amiable people who brushed off my divorce with laughter. I started to learn more about Nancy. She was a 30-year-old widow who had outlived her husband. Apparently, she took over the apartment from her biological father. Her late husband had been a doctor. Small world. I felt like we might have just missed each other at some point. I started working part-time at a local bookstore. I considered getting a full-time job, but I wanted a part-time job that gave me more free time. There was quite a bit of physical labor required at the apartment, so I started doing some simple repairs on my days off. Nancy would occasionally share some of her dinner or bring me bread that she had baked as a hobby. The more we interacted, the more I found myself attracted to her. She casually helped out the other tenants in the apartment. The hallways were always clean, and despite the age of the apartment, it was comfortable living there. She even seemed to help the children of the single mothers with their homework from time to time. Just as I was drawn to her, she seemed to show an interest in me. She asked me about my previous job and often stopped by the bookstore where I worked part-time. It didn't take us long to start having dinner together. As we closed the gap between us, I found myself touching her skin for the first time in the darkness when I stayed at her place for the first time. She looked even more alluring than usual, so stunning that it took my breath away. Her skin was as cool as when I touched her hand that day. There was a strange sensation in her skin, and I instinctively pulled my hand back. Her skin felt too different to be human. Nancy stared at me as I pulled my hand back. Seeing my surprise, she laughed a little. "Sorry, what's going on?" In my flustered state, I lost all my older man's composure and asked her. She just narrowed her eyes and smiled. "Curiosity kills, you know. Are you sure you won't regret this?" She stared me down with eyes as fierce as a wild feline, revealing her skin to me. Upon it, a multitude of surgical scars remained. It must have been a significant injury. The marks on her pale skin almost resembled a flower pattern. The shocking severity of the scars I was seeing for the first time left me speechless, and she peered into my face with a hint of amusement. "I told you you'd regret it, didn't I? You can't touch me." She slowly pointed towards the exit. "Leave this room and regret hurting me." She expelled me from the bed with a cold voice I had never heard before. "What about those scars? Why?" I asked, and Nancy just laughed. Then she began to speak quietly. Nancy's husband used to work as a surgeon at a general hospital. Apparently, he had been unable to perform a surgery that he was supposed to because he was suspected of collusion with a pharmaceutical company. The patient died during the surgery performed by a substitute doctor. Of course, her husband had no involvement with the pharmaceutical company. It was the head of the surgery department who had pinned the blame on him. Taking all responsibility, her husband had to leave his job. After leaving the hospital, he was always down. When he said he was going to go on a hike, which was his hobby, Nancy was relieved. It was winter, but she sent off her experienced husband. That was the last time she saw him alive. He didn't return even after his scheduled descent. After a search, he was found dead in a snow cave. There was no suicide note. Did he go to the snow-capped mountain to end his life, or was it the result of an accident? Feeling responsible for not stopping him, Nancy threw herself off a cliff, apparently trying to follow him. Fortunately, she survived but with significant scars left on her body. "You can't mean the pharmaceutical company is..." I had a gut feeling, and my words got stuck in my throat. "I heard about a scandal caused by a senior colleague from my boss." "That's right. It's the company where you work. They refused my husband, who had asked them many times to prove his innocence," Nancy said with a strained voice. She knew very well that I had nothing to do with it. But she said she despised me just for hearing that I worked in sales for that company. "I thought it's okay for you to get hurt with something you can never have," Nancy said and laughed. She was laughing, but to me, it looked like she was crying. She knew she was being unreasonable. Yet, she still wanted to hurt me, regardless of the logic. Her feelings must have been strong. Nancy still has her deceased husband in her heart. She intends to live on, carrying his regrets. I shudder. Did Nancy draw my attention just for this? I wanted to believe that there were some feelings for me, if only a little bit, otherwise. "Thanks for everything so far. I'm leaving tomorrow. I can't stay in this apartment any longer. I decided to leave tomorrow. I took a little break during my long life. My days in the apartment were such peaceful days. That would help if you could do that." I had a slight hope that she might stop me, but she wasn't that kind of person. She turned her back on me, not wanting to see my face anymore. She never looked at my face until the end. The next day, I rushed to the real estate agency from the morning and looked for a new apartment. This time I wasn't unemployed, so I managed to rent a place. I immediately started moving. I didn't have many belongings to begin with, so the move was easy. Once I leave this apartment, I plan to look for a job. My break from life is over. I told them I would quit my bookstall part-time job a month in advance. There's no going back now. I left the apartment as the neighbors saw me off. Since Nancy didn't show her face until the end, I left the keys with one of the tenants. I left a note of thanks for their kindness and decided to leave it with the keys. I wonder if Nancy will read my message. She probably won't read it. I had a feeling. A month later, I found a new job. It's the same sales job as before. I'm selling real estate. I ended up getting a job at that real estate agency. Although I'm learning a lot in a field that's new to me, I'm enjoying every day. And finally, today, I managed to move. My new place is that old apartment building. I've come back to that familiar apartment. I wondered what kind of face you'd make when you came back. Nancy was waiting for me at the entrance, arms crossed. Despite her harsh words, her eyes were calm. I'd like to start over. At my words, Nancy laughed as if she was dumbfounded. When I suggested that we start with introducing ourselves, Nancy wouldn't play along, saying it was silly. After asking a few times, she finally agreed. Even if we start over, it might be the same. If so, we'll start over again. As I responded nonchalantly, Nancy gave a wry smile. I hope that when she finally sorts things out, I'll be right next to her. If she chooses someone else, I will say congratulations to her with all the bravado I can muster. How did you like it? Your subscription to our channel will motivate us. See you in the next video. Heck, what? Morning already. I felt thirsty and opened my eyes to see the dazzling morning sun streaming in through the window. I'm John Doe, 28 years old. Just a regular single guy working at an advertising company. Yesterday, we had a company party. Perhaps I drank too much, I can't remember anything. I managed to wake up my lazy body, which still had some alcohol left in it, and looked around to find my tie and bag carelessly tossed on the floor. Perhaps I had let loose a little too much, being our first party in a while. With a pounding headache from the hangover, I stood there in a daze when suddenly my cell phone rang. The call was from my colleague, Bob. Hey John, good morning, you okay after last night? Bob's voice on the other end of the phone sounded like he found something amusing. Maybe I messed up after all. Honestly, I'm a bit dizzy with this hangover. I can't remember anything from last night. Did I do something weird? No way, you don't remember doing all that. As the truth unfolded from Bob's words, my face turned redder by the minute. At last night's party, I met our junior colleague, Emma, after a long time. She was a sweet 24-year-old woman, a junior in the department I used to be a part of. However, for some reason, I had been keeping my distance from her. Apparently, Emma didn't find it amusing, and took this opportunity to approach me. Don't you think you've been a little cold lately, John? You used to be there for me. That's right. Being a senior in the same department, I often listened to Emma's worries. But she consulted me so often without considering my convenience, it was frankly bothersome. I'm sorry, but I just switched departments and frankly, I have enough on my plate right now. Plus, you have a boyfriend. He might worry if you're frequently dining alone with another man, don't you think? Yes. Emma had a boyfriend. Yet, she kept insisting on talking and inviting me to bars and restaurants. I listened to her complaints, and because of our positions, I ended up paying every time. Looking back, I might have been taken advantage of. In the past, however, I was swallowed up by her strong pace and was at her beck and call. Tonight, however, I managed to express my intentions with the help of alcohol. I drank too much due to the tension, and my memory cut off from there. According to Bob, she seemed clearly discontent with my words. "So, you won't listen to me anymore, John?" "That's right. I think it's for the best." Even to an outsider, Emma seemed too persistent. I was getting tired of it. Then she provocatively said, "You refuse my talks, but you're often out with department head Catherine, aren't you? Isn't that unfair? She's indeed beautiful, but somewhat aloof, and she's 9 years older than me." "Oh, you're not by any chance attracted to Catherine, are you?" "Don't badmouth Catherine." According to Bob, I abruptly cut her off by slamming my beer glass on the table. Emma, who only knew my usual calm demeanor, was taken aback by my sudden change. But the surprise didn't end there. Incredibly, I made a shocking statement at the party. "Yes, that's right. I love my department manager. You just don't know it, Emma. The manager in reality is really cute. Who cares if she's older? Who cares about her position? I love her. I can't stand it. I'm crazy about her." Just saying it was enough to make me blush, but what was really bad was that at that moment, the manager was standing right behind me. She was late to the drinking party because she had errands that day, and she came at the absolute worst possible timing. After that, I drank too much and blacked out, fell on the spot, and Bob somehow got me home by taxi. Listening to the whole story made me despair at my own reckless behavior, but Bob seemed to enjoy it till the end. To be honest, the way you interfered, Emma, ruined the fun atmosphere of the drinking party. Listening to what you, John, said felt so refreshing. Maybe the manager was happy to receive a once-in-a-lifetime love confession like that. No, there's no way, right? If it's just me embarrassing myself, it would have been fine. But to even get the section chief in trouble is another story. This situation developed, but the trigger goes back 6 months ago. When I was transferred to the advertising department, the manager of the advertising department, Catherine, became my immediate boss. She is 33, 5 years older than me, and single. She has beautiful dark brown glossy hair tied back and beautiful features with cat-like eyes shining in a deep brown color. She stood out even in the office. Not only her work, but also the way she dressed in a suit on her slender figure was dazzling, and she had many fans in the company, regardless of gender. I was glad to be able to work under such an excellent person, but it seemed that she did not have a good impression of me, and actually said this to me. "John, please stop messing up the relationships within the department. Currently, it seems like you're having a relationship with a female employee who has a boyfriend." Apparently, she thinks that I'm having a relationship with Emma. But as I mentioned before, I was just listening to her story. I tried to explain the details, but she said, "That's enough," and cut off my explanation, so the misunderstanding was never cleared up. Actually, I've been approached by many women besides Emma for advice on their problems. I'm not popular with women, I'm just valued as a conversation partner. I myself thought that I might be in this role for the rest of my life, and I was about to give up on romance. The last time I dated a woman was 7 years ago when I was a junior in college. That was when I was a junior in college. My ex-girlfriend Nancy suddenly said, "I've found someone I like, so I want to break up." I was shocked, but Nancy proposed. "I don't want to be lovers anymore, but I hope we can be good friends. I feel very calm when I talk to you, John." As for me, I couldn't hate Nancy, so I said, "Let's do that," with a smile. Looking back now, I was just pretending to be tough. and I might have wanted to show her my good side. I should have just cut off ties with her when we broke up, but because of my false pride, I ended up being manipulated by my ex-girlfriend. Just like now and in the past, I'm always weak to pressure, and for women I'm always just a good guy and I never become their first choice. That was the pattern. Well, my looks are not what you would call handsome, so it can't be helped. One day, a month after I was assigned to the advertising department, I and the manager were left in the office working overtime in an awkward atmosphere as usual. We had received a request for an art exhibition advertisement from a client, and the two of us were creating flyers for the art exhibition. In addition to the exhibition of famous art prints, there would also be posters and related goods for sale. The two of us were each staring at a computer, trying to create an attractive flyer that would entice customers to buy. But there was no one else in the office, and it was awkward to just work silently. Thinking that, I glanced at the manager, and she was staring at a postcard printed with a painting called Water Lilies by Monet, which was one of the sales items for the art exhibition. Thinking it might start a conversation, I said, "It's a beautiful painting," and she brightened her eyes and began to talk happily in a way that was completely different from usual. "Isn't it? Monet is an impressionist painter, and he has painted many pictures of water lilies. This painting on the postcard is owned by the Boston Museum of Art." She talked about Monet passionately for a while. It was the first time I saw her, who was usually cool, talking so much, and I was surprised at her rich knowledge about art. However, after a while, she made a face as if she realized something and said, "I'm sorry, I talked too much," and blushed and looked down. "Why are you apologizing? I didn't know what kind of painter Monet was, so I found your explanation really interesting." I also secretly thought it was cute how our section chief got so passionate talking about what she loved. But she said, "Enough with the pleasantries," and shook her head side to side while blushing. I know. When it comes to talking about art, I just can't help but get excited. That's perfectly fine. If we're working in advertising, knowledge of art is absolutely essential. Our conversation continued to flow naturally, and we were able to make significant progress on our flyer. As the overtime for the day was wrapping up, I decided to be bold and asked the manager, "Would you like to go for a drink?" I thought that since we had warmed up to each other, having a drink would deepen our relationship even further. Initially, the manager squinted at me with a skeptical look. "Well, aren't you involved with your junior colleague, Emma? You don't plan on making a move on an older woman like me, do you?" "No, not at all. Emma is infatuated with her boyfriend, and I'm just someone she talks to." "Really? Well, that's okay. I'm not that kind of woman. We'll have our drink and then head straight home." Despite the manager's initial wariness, we managed to have a drink together at a local bar. The manager seemed to enjoy her draft beer and loosened up enough to talk about art as she had before. She had studied art history in college, and I found her stories fascinating. She seemed to finally let her guard down since I made no further advances. As we left the bar, she said, "I had a great time." I, too, enjoyed spending time with the manager. From that day forward, the walls between us came down. We were able to work more smoothly while maintaining open communication. Whenever our schedules matched up, we would go for drinks. It became our regular activity. One day, the manager opened up to me. "I misunderstood you, John. I've heard from other employees that you often get consulted by female staff about their problems. I had an unfair prejudice against you, and I've been cold towards you, and I truly regret that." I smiled and said to the deeply apologetic manager, "No worries at all. When someone hears that you're alone with female employees, it's a common assumption. But now, I can understand why Emma feels the way she does. Just talking with you, John, is healing in its own way." the manager shared her past trauma with me. You know how I get really excited and talk nonstop when it comes to art. My previous partner found that repulsive. He didn't expect me to be so talkative because I appear to be a reserved person. It was a shock when he broke up with me because of that, so I've been trying to keep quiet ever since. Looking back, I've been treating you the same way I was treated. It was wrong of me to form a negative image of you before getting to know you. I never imagined that the manager had such a past. She had been pretending to be someone she wasn't after being rejected for being her true self. I would never do that. That's because I genuinely like the manager, just the way she is. Spending time together, she became someone special to me before I knew it. Catherine, I think you're incredibly charming just the way you are. We've managed to understand each other like this, so let's let bygones be bygones. Please, I'd love for you to continue sharing about art with me. At my words, Catherine showed a genuinely happy smile. Because you're such a good listener, John, you also satisfy my frustrations. I've been holding back for so long, so I'm really grateful. But recently, I've been a little worried about you. You've been frequently asked out by Emma, and you're paying for her meals, aren't you? I think it's a bit different if you listen to her concerns once in a while. You're right. I've been feeling stressed about my relationship with Emma lately, so I think I'm going to distance myself a bit. Until now, I could only find my sense of self-worth by being close to someone. But since meeting Catherine and falling in love, I've come to want to spend my precious time with my special person. That's how I came to the events of last night. Having fallen in love with Catherine, I tried to keep a distance from Emma, but I never thought I would make such a blunder while drunk. I was beating myself up over it, but I decided to apologize to Catherine first, and nervously made a call. Catherine must have been appalled because I went on a drinking spree. Listening to the dial tone, with a bad feeling in my chest, Catherine answered the phone quicker than I expected. Hello. Catherine, I'm really sorry about yesterday. My thoughtless actions have caused you trouble. I know an apology won't cut it, but please let me get down on my knees. Whoa, John, calm down. There's no need for you to do that. Just calm down first. As soon as I heard Catherine's voice over the receiver, I blurted out an apology. From the tone of her voice, it didn't seem like she was angry. Instead, Catherine said something unexpected. I'm actually on my way to your apartment right now. You seemed really drunk yesterday, and I thought your hangover must be rough. I'm coming to check on you. I brought some stuff, so let me in. I hadn't expected Catherine to come to my place. 10 minutes later, the intercom rang, and Catherine had bought not only food, but also mineral water and painkillers. I'm sorry for making you worry. No, it's fine. You have always been so good to me. You drank a little too much last night, didn't you? You don't look so good. You should get some rest today. Catherine said that and comforted me with kind words. But the words "you drank too much" stuck in my chest. Probably, she interpreted my words last night as he couldn't help it because he was drunk, and was silently signaling I don't mind. But I wanted to convey my feelings properly. Catherine, even though I don't remember anything from yesterday, everything I said at the party is true. Huh. When she heard my words, Catherine looked at me with a surprised face, and I quickly started speaking to change the atmosphere while blushing. But, of course, I understand if it's impossible. I'm happy just being by your side, Catherine. If we can continue to work together from now on, that's more than enough. So please, forget what I just said. While I was talking, Catherine hugged me tightly. For a moment, I couldn't understand what was happening, but Catherine was crying, saying I'm happy, with a smile. I was really happy about what you said yesterday, but I thought I shouldn't take it seriously, so I was acting defensive. I never thought you felt the same way about me, John. Huh. You like me too? Yes, spending time with you, I've grown to like you not as a subordinate, but as a man. But you are so kind, John. I've always told myself not to expect anything from that kindness. I've been so mean, advising you to keep your distance from Emma because I wanted you all to myself. I'm just awful, aren't I? Tears streamed down her face as I held her. Like I've said before, I love you just as you are, Catherine. I'm incredibly happy that you feel that way about me. We savored our happiness, holding each other tightly. A year after we confessed our feelings to each other, I invited Catherine into a French restaurant for our first anniversary and proposed to her there. "Marry me," I said, handing her a diamond ring. Catherine beamed with joy. What a romantic proposal. My heart's racing. Because when I confessed my feelings, I was so hammered that I couldn't remember it. I wanted to etch the words of my proposal in my brain. I can see that. I will never forget today, even after decades of being married to you. I know that as long as I'm with her, we'll make many wonderful memories together.